All right, so today we're going to be working on a 2004 Honda Pilot. This is the 3.5 liter V6, and we're going to be changing out the alternator today. And the location of it is on the passenger side, and it's right down here. So you're going to have to access it from the top down. All right, so I wanted to stay with original equipment, so we went with the Denso. And this alternator runs about $187 on Amazon. If you go to the dealer, it's going to run you $483. And this is the part number that I'm using. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is take off the top shroud. You'll have 4 bolts here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it's going to be a 10 millimeter, so let's go ahead and remove that. All right, so now we need to remove this outer shroud, and what you're going to use is a straight slot screwdriver, and it's just 1/4 of a turn. And the whole thing will just pop right off. All right, before you start disconnecting the electrical connection on your alternator, you want to disconnect your battery terminal first, so go ahead and disconnect your battery terminal. All right, so to get this alternator out, we're going to have to take off the motor mount. So what you want to do is, and the reason why, we need to jack the motor up a little bit just so we can get that alternator out. All right, so we remove the motor mount, and again, you can go ahead and jack up the front of the engine. It gives a little bit more access to the alternator. Now, we're going to go ahead and take off the serpentine belt, which right down here, that is your belt tensioner, and it's a size 14. So go ahead and put tension onto it. I will show you how that's done, and then we'll pull off the serpentine belt. And right now is a great time to change that out. All right, so what you're going to do is put your 14 on the that's your belt tensioner, and then what we're going to do is you're going to put pressure counterclockwise, and then go ahead and release your serpentine belt. Okay, now that's off. All right, and there's your serpentine belt. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is take off the, there's 2 bolts that are holding on the alternator. And also you can take off the bolts at this time that is holding on the top electrical connection right here. This right here, you can pull that bolt. That's a 10 millimeter. Your 2 bolts, there's one on top, and then there will be one down below. So you'll have this one here, and then you got that one right down there. All right, so the top bolt is a 12 millimeter, and the bottom bolt is a 14 millimeter. All right, so this is what the second bolt looks like. It's 14 millimeter, and now the alternator is just sitting there. So all we need to do now is take off the back electrical connections. But we should be able to get to it a little bit easier now that we can move it. The other thing that makes it a lot easier is I've been using these for a long time. These are swivel head, extra long box end, and they're ratcheting. So they actually have a ratchet to it, but swivel head. And the reach on it is what I really like. One end, so like one end will be a 14, the other end's a 12. All right, so this is the connection points that you're going to have on the back side of your alternator. So this will be a nut that you're going to take off, and then this is an actual electrical connection. All right, so on the back side of your alternator, now it's a lot easier to get to. Go ahead, there's covers. So you're going to pull these covers back. This is your bolt right here. The other one, you have to pull the cover off on this one, and then you have your electrical connection. So this one and that one. All right, so here's the nut that came off the backside of the alternator. This is actually a 12 millimeter. And now let's take off the actual electrical connection, and then we'll start working on bringing this thing out. All right, so here's your electrical connection. You take the outside boot off, and then right here, there's a little tab on the backside that you have to push in and lift straight up, and then it just pops right off. All right, so what we did is we took off the bracket that holds the alternator on, size 12, and then we're going to move this bottle out of the way. All right, so on the back side, there's a little tab. It's kind of hard to see from this angle here. And what you do is you pull out on it with a screwdriver. You just kind of pry out, and then you pull the bottle straight up. So we got the tab pulled out on it already, and now my partner pulled up on the bottles. All right, so now you got everything out of the way. So I just pulled the bottle over, and then the only thing that you're going to be running into is your air conditioning line. However, if you muscle around it, you'll get that alternator out. All right, so now that the alternator's out, I can show you, this is the reason why you will not be able to access it from the bottom is the air conditioning. That's your compressor right down there. So the air conditioning compressor sits in the way, and so you can't get to it. Here's the new versus the old. Now you want to double check everything, make sure your bolt patterns are correct, make sure everything lines up and the electrical connection is correct. I mean, look at your pins inside to make sure that you have the right amount, and if it's the correct one, let's go ahead and reinstall. All right, so the other thing too, before you go put it back on, you also want to count the grooves to make sure you have enough on each one. I've done it before in the past where I've installed one and it had the wrong pulley, and guess what? You got to take it back out, and then it's just a pain. So it's better to check everything now before you reinstall it. All right, so anyways, there it is. We're putting it back in, so go ahead and drop it back down, and then it is easier with two people if you can pull these hoses over to the side. And that's why we jack the motor up, because it gives you a little bit better accessibility. So go ahead and start reconnecting the electrical connections on the back side, and make sure that you hear the click when you put in this electrical connector. So as you're sliding it on, it will click, and then put your boot back over the top, and then let's hook this back up too with the 12 millimeter nut. All right, so what you're gonna wanna do is install this bracket. Do not tighten it up. And once you get the bracket on, then you can hang your alternator off of it. So go ahead and start putting the bolt back into the bracket there. And then what you're gonna do, now don't tighten any of this up because you still have to get the bottom. That was a 14 millimeter bolt. So we're gonna go ahead and put that in right now. All right, now that you got all three bolts started, go ahead and tighten them down. Now so you've got this one, you've got this one here, and then the one at the very bottom right there. So go ahead and cinch those down now. All right, now that that is done, let's go ahead and reinstall this bracket here. So go ahead and put that back on. All right, so now we're gonna install the serpentine belt. This is the one that I picked up from the auto parts store. It's the Continental brand. So let's go ahead and install that. All right, so let's go ahead and install the motor mount now, since the serpentine belt is on. And anyways, go ahead and put that on before you lower down the engine, and then let's go ahead and cinch it up. All right, so now go ahead and put on your shroud and your top engine cover. All right, so do it once over. Now that you got all your engine covers back in, just do it once over. Make sure that your bottle is locked back in place and all your lines are ran correctly. And then the last thing that you need to do is hook up your battery. So go ahead and hook up your battery, and once you're done, start it up and see if it works. Hopefully this video helped you out. Please subscribe and like, and I'll see you on the next one.